If you're an attorney looking to hire non-attorney sales staff, you're going to want to watch this one. This is an interview with Ian Almasi. He's based in Orlando, and he's the founder and manager of Immigration Finder. And it's a firm that helps immigration lawyers become more systematic, more automated, more profitable using modern solutions that are simple, effective, easy to use. So we're going to be talking about tech, systems, staffing, and essentially anything that requires non-attorney staffing to get you more revenue. So welcome to the program, Ian.
Yeah, absolutely. Happy to be here, Hugo. Thanks a bunch for having me on.
Awesome. So I'm just curious, can you give us a little background on Immigration Finder, like the elevator pitch?
Yeah, absolutely. So we're a business development company. We only work with immigration firms in the U.S. And what we do is we help build sales teams, the intake process, and legal production. So essentially, if you want to build staff and automate an immigration firm to help it grow or just become more manageable, maybe you want to save more time, that's where we come in.
Great. And so one of the reasons that we wanted to talk to you is because of your focus on systems and staffing and things of this nature. And I know you work in immigration, but frankly, I find that this is super applicable to all practice areas, especially those that require upfront retainers. So tell us, like, for someone exploring hiring non-attorney sales staff to drive more clientele, what do you find is the thing that is the most obvious thing to do that most attorneys oftentimes don't realize is the low-hanging fruit?
Well, definitely the thing is, especially in immigration, I'm sure this is true in other areas of law, is there's a lot of window shopping. I mean, a lot of the proactive people that are usually great clients that plan ahead get ignored because they're not going to hire you immediately. And so that's one of the things we see is just not really having a follow-up process or just kind of sending out a retainer and then just praying that they pay you instead of, actually checking in with them and finding out what happened is kind of that. Because we run a lot of these, post-sale surveys and realize that some people bought just because, they like the salesperson or because they lost the contract or, some people, they end up, all sorts of stuff can happen to them. So that's kind of that. So what you want to focus on is having a sales process that's easy to follow. And especially if you own a small law firm and you're doing everything, it's hard to think about how do I even divide this, but you got to kind of think, pre-consult, consult, post-consult, and what are the components in there that need to get built out to make it seem like your firm is really easy to work with.
Is there an attorney type or a moment or a turning point in an attorney's career that makes them realize that they shouldn't be doing sales?
Well, overall, you have to sell something to be in business. That's something is the big thing. But overall, a lot of the firms we work with, they're not all huge. Obviously, we have clients that have sales teams of 8 or 16 people. We have, solo attorneys that have worked with us before that want to build out a better sales process or whatever the other process is. So I guess the big thing to kind of answer your question is, because what I'm kind of hearing you ask is how do people know when that they should even do this?
Yeah.
And that's an important thing is, you can wait until you're frustrated or you can do it beforehand. It is kind of the thing. It's so that's what I would do. But a lot of what we actually set up for people is you want to have a pre-consult process where someone can help screen the inquiries. And they're not there to give legal advice, just have them to interview and ask a structured set of questions, or just even find the people that are willing to communicate. So, or 100 inquiries a month, find that you get in a month, find the 40 or your ratio is that are actually willing to have a back and forth dialogue so that you're not screening through all of them, and then you'll help them screen those.
Do you find intake is the first kind of summit for attorneys looking to make that turning point?
Well, the thing is, though, it's often a part of the business that's a little bit unpredictable in how it's executed. Because a lot of people that are hiring attorneys, they have to. And then so the thing is people ignore a process, specifically with a lot of attorneys that work with the court, is in order to sell, someone got a letter that says, hey, you must have an attorney by this date. And they call the attorney and they say, hey, it's whatever amount of money. Then they help them sign up from there. So they don't even realize how a process would even be needed in a lot of cases, just because the money is still coming in. But it's hard to actually know how much money you're leaving on the table if you don't have a process. Because when you look and realize that, oh yeah, actually, a third of our phone calls don't even get answered. That happened recently with the firm is we did an audit and realized that 80% of their phone calls weren't getting answered. They were just going by the wayside, not getting called back. And that's an insanely high number. They're getting hundreds of calls a month.
That would give me a heart attack if I found out that.
Well, yeah, that's exactly what happened when I showed the stats to the lawyers. he had a little bit of a meltdown.
Is that so? Is that one of the more common leaky pipes that you see in someone's stack, in someone's marketing stack?
So definitely. I mean, kind of like using the whole leaky bucket, leaky pipe analogy. There's generally a lot of like areas of opportunity that are getting missed. Is one, just not really calling leads or calling them back very often is one. The whole inbound process too is, when you answer the phone, you have a process for what to do. It's like, okay, someone's calling in to make a payment and have it written down, forward it over. Part of the business is an answering service. We categorize all the calls that come into firms as a current client that wants to make a payment, has a question, or they're calling to ask a question, which is usually they got something in the mail or there's something came up. And then there's a prospect that's calling for the first time, a prospect that's calling back that has not received a consult or agreement or some type of quote. And then a prospect that's calling back that has received it. So they know whatever the price would be, essentially. And those 6 categories can kind of help you look at it. But think of a pie chart for all of your calls. You might realize that 60% of our calls are just clients calling to ask questions. Why don't we should probably just hire somebody just to answer those calls, because we're missing calls from current clients because of that. And so you hiring a Latin call agent for $1,000, $1,200 a month can easily pay for itself right there. Even though you might be thinking about, we don't really need this person, but you can then maximize the amount of revenue generating time that's getting spent.
So that $1,000, $1,200 that you're referencing, is that for generally outsourced staff, or is it for part-time in-house? Like, can you describe?
Definitely for a direct hire. I mean, if you're going to hire like a receptionist from different parts of Latin America, obviously this is going to vary by area, but generally $700 to $1,400 a month is a pay scale you can hire people in. So if you want to go post ads on LinkedIn or Indeed and whatever Latin American country, you'll get applicants that'll work for that amount of money.
Yeah. So I'm curious. So when you mentioned that, there's like these logic trees of how to answer phones and how to respond, and they're kind of confined to these scripts. You find that that's only best when it is a direct hire and not, say, like a third-party answering service. Is that fair to say?
Well, you can have an answering service for it. I mean, generally the answering service is going to have its own flow, and so you probably want to plug into that. But the thing is, like, an answering service is, they're there to do a specific job. Just answer the phone, usually take a message, and that. You can definitely train an answering service. We have an answering service. Clients train us, depending on their specific needs. Great. But kind of the thing is, though, if you really want to get on top of the sales, it's good to have a dedicated person. Yeah. And it's good to have a dedicated person that doesn't have a lot of split responsibilities. So that's really common. A paralegal's answering the phone, or the same person scanning mails. That's where you get more of the teeter-totter of the business. Mm-hmm. It's more like, okay, the cases go up, the paralegal's working more, so they're putting less energy into selling consults. And the case volume dies, they put more energy into consults, and you kind of end up on this roller coaster of revenue in the business. Or it just stays the same because you're just working on work you just got out of that. So it's good to treat intake and sales like its own department.
Well, yeah, and I think it's a good kind of like segue into hiring salespeople, non-attorney sales staff, because I think that intake is the first. I mean, most people would argue that intake's the first impression, and it is part of the sales process. Despite them not closing, they're setting up appointments. They're essentially setting up the first part of that funnel, or the second part after intake. What do you recommend to attorneys who've yet to reconcile that intake is part of sales? What sales methodologies should intake be implementing?
Well, there's 3 words I really like to use. There's quantity, quality, and then viability. So I think you have all of your inquiries, and that goes down to the ones that potentially qualify or for whatever reason will progress through the sales process. And then the other ones are the viable ones, meaning that this is a group of people that are potentially going to pay you. So it's good to kind of find out those ratios in the firm, even if you have a rough idea. Like if you think, okay, we have 1,000 leads a month and 400 of them are quality enough where we're going to progress into the sales process, whatever. A quarter of those do consults. We do 100 consults a month, and then X amount of those receive agreements, and so on and so forth. So whatever you do, you want to find out what kind of that ratio is for you: quantity, quality, and then viability, and essentially structure your sales process around that. Because you don't want it to be too complicated, because sales isn't. It ends up just being like a conversation. You're just essentially communicating with people and guiding their decisions. That doesn't need to be too crazy. It's And most people, they want an easy experience. Like,
Yeah.
you ever go to the hotel and they tell you about all the features, if it's really hard, that's not what you want. Like, you want someone that goes up and say, hey, you're going to love staying here. Here's the room, do that. We'll take care of everything for you. That's the process people want. They want it to be easy. They just want to feel relieved. And that's what people really want.
So how do we translate that easy intake, that entrance into the funnel, into hiring, or rather having those communications managed by non-attorney sales staff? And I just want to take a step back. How do you hire the right attorney sales staff? I find that this is kind of the biggest missing point when I talk to criminal defense attorneys, especially, certainly immigration attorneys, certainly family law, where they have to sell the service. They're competing on price often. How do you find those folks? Like, where do you recommend attorneys look for non-attorney sales staff?
Well, we pretty much hire everybody from Latin America. And so what we do is we post ads on LinkedIn and Indeed. And if you just go on Google, you can also email me, ian@immigrationfinder.com, if you want to. We have a free guide on this and a few articles on it. So listen, well, one thing you can do is just post ads online. A lot of these other job platforms, they work exactly the same abroad as they do in the country. So there's not even a difference. You don't have to start a new account or anything. And you essentially just sift through the CVs. But the big thing you want to do is to have a process they can plug into. Because, that's kind of like finding the person. But also, if you actually hire someone that's a good professional that maybe has a call center background, or they've worked in some type of high volume sales abroad, which is common. Because in a lot of parts of Latin America, you make more money speaking English than you do with a law degree or another type of trained professional. And it's kind of crazy when you start interviewing people. Sometimes the salary difference is insane. But that's kind of the idea, though, is you want to plug them into something. So generally in the whole sales process, there's the pre-consult, the consult, and the post-consult, which is like onboarding the client, sending the agreement. Most people are going to want to help with the pre-consult because they need help filtering down the inquiries. The attorneys like having their hands on the money. It's not that you're going to pass it off. But also it's a transition process. Because an attorney, if you're watching this as an attorney, you're a final product. Failure is not an option thinker. Right. And you know who go, definitely working with attorneys. But that's kind of the thing, though, is you got to think of the transition. A lot of people, they don't want to do this. They think, how would someone else even talk to people about the services and that? Because most attorneys don't know how to sell the service without giving legal advice. They don't know how. That's how they sell, is by advising people. But when you're a non-attorney salesperson, you sell by evaluating them, by asking the right questions and realizing, okay, you have X criteria, you're ready to go to the next step. So I think kind of that nurse-doctor model, like the dental assistant and the dentist, that's kind of what you want to do. You want to have a person who's filters, screens people. The other professional comes in for just the needed information and the needed skill, and then they resume the process.
That's a great analogy. But so for that non-attorney salesperson, the one that you're finding in Latin America, what is the criteria that you have attorneys post on these job ads that yield the best results, aside from professional level English?
Yeah, well, the job title is definitely important. Like, for example, we'll run the job titles intake coordinator versus sales agent, and we'll get drastically different candidates. So kind of think of the type of person that you want, because you might want someone that is sales heavy, but you might want someone that can review CVs to make sure that they fit into they can apply for an employment-based immigration case. That's not necessarily going to be the hard closer type. So you might need someone a little bit more analytical, but it kind of depends on the firm, your vibe, and those things. So that's part of it. But one thing we really highlight is we have an actual working interview process. So we have them actually fill out a form and a test. We want a template for this, happy to provide it. And so essentially we have them submit some translations, a personality test, some other things. And you don't have to go too crazy, but get them to do something before the job, because you don't just want to hire people that are good at interviewing. And that's kind of the thing. And then you get a lot of applicants too. We'll post ads in Argentina and get 300 applicants in 2 days. So could have a process to screen people, just a form to fill out so you can stay organized.
Got it. So let's say you have that qualified intake staff. Let's say maybe one or two folks. You have one qualified sales, non-attorney salesperson, helping sell retainers under this the nurse doctor model. I love that analogy. What's the best way to manage this type of professional remotely?
Well, we normally set up a tool called Time Doctor, which monitors their activities, screenshots them, and then it's their clock in, clock out.
Yeah.
You're going to need to have an online phone system. Then you generally want to have a very organized process, because the goal too is that they're spending as much time doing revenue generating activity as possible without ignoring other important things. But a lot of the other important things you can automate. Like if you're working with Obligatos now, you might get leads emailed to you. You could get those added to the CRM or a spreadsheet automatically, so they're just calling people instead of typing it in. You have to do some data entry if someone calls on the phone, do that. But that's low-hanging fruit, because if you can free up 30% of someone's day and they can make X amount of extra phone calls a week over the course of a year, that could be them talking to people thousands more times,
Right.
which is kind of more hits at that. That's kind of the thing, get a real organized process and get a very simple process, even if it's just a few steps. Like you have the new leads, you have the ones that you're trying to contact, the ones you talk to, the ones that schedule a consult, the ones that received a contract. So develop some type of category and a way to count which ones are in each process, or which in each part of the process, which just about every modern CRM will do for you. And that's a good way to set it up.
So so in terms of, so there's ways to do, like, if you will, like surveillance on their productivity, right? There's ways to track their screenshots, their time. Now, what do you do to train them? Because I find that attorneys that have to sell retainers who want to hire non-attorney sales staff, they don't know how to sell. That's their pain point.
Yeah.
They hire sales staff to sell, but they have a lot of insecurity about training.
Yeah.
How do they bridge that gap? How do they enable trust into this professional who's supposed to bring in that skill set?
Yeah, that's the difficult thing too, is in the area of law, there is a huge knowledge gap, even within the professionals. Like even you meet an attorney, like I work with immigration attorneys that are really good at investment immigration. They know nothing about how court works and vice versa. And so there's always going to be a knowledge gap. But the thing though is, one thing, you want to define what baseline proficiency is. Like, okay, they don't need to know everything, but they should know X. So write that down. Then what we do is we put it all into a document, like a self-guided program. And then the first portion of time, however you want to allot it, we give them a checklist of what they need to do every day. And we have them just Google a lot of stuff. I mean, AI is pretty advanced now, so you can do that. When we did this, ChatGPT, and that wasn't a thing, so we just developed a leftover process. But what we do is develop a day-by-day checklist of what they need to do. But we have it set up to where, like, they need to log in, they need to set up their software, they need to set up their email signature, they need to research look over the list of case types that they do, those kinds of things. And then we have them actually go look up those things online and then, write out a section of what each case type is, so that way they get it in there mentally, and those kinds of things. And then maybe that's day one. And then day two, they'll start answering calls. There's a form for them to fill out on the phone. Like much I mentioned earlier, they can categorize it. So you find out who the person is. Are they a potential client? Is it their first time calling? What they needed, so like have them type that portion in. But that's kind of it. It's essentially, as far as training goes, like figure out what baseline proficiency is and get them there. Because you think, hey, how do I train somebody? But don't think, how do I teach them everything I know? Think, hey, what should they know? Like, what do they need to know? It's just like, what are the basics, as you would determine the basics in your firm, and get it to that. And normally what we do is we have a worksheet for it where there's 10 core competencies we write out, like they should know, even if it's things like you got to know the address of the building, like you got to know we're on X floor, because they're abroad.
Right.
So if someone's at the front of the building calling in, they might be like, hey, I'm here for my consult. It's like, all right, well, good luck, go find it. But that's kind of the thing. You got to kind of put yourself in that situation. But a lot of these people, if you're hiring them from abroad, if they've worked at a call center before or at the type of business like the firms we work with, where we build out, they're used to having this type of documentation. So that's that. But if you go plug it in, there are a lot of great tools also. A good thing you can do too is there's a tools, Tango.us, ScribeHow. They're tools that will turn your browsing activity into a PDF. So you can just go into your case management system or CRM and just do something you regularly do, and just have this Chrome extension taking pictures in that automatically, and it will automatically turn it into a document that you can give to them without having to type or fill it in or anything.
That's
and
cool.
So there are a lot of these tools you can do, but just develop baseline competency and build some resources for them that gets them to that. Not just, hey, they need to know everything, but
sure,
they might not need to know everything about a legal topic, but what are the three main questions, or what are the three main points that you would want to listen for on the phone to find out if someone has a viable case.
That I think that addresses like the knowledge gap, right? Because it seems like that's the first barrier of training. It's just like dump everything that you know about the firm and your clientele in the area on. And so when the attorney is interviewing the non-attorney sales staff candidate, what should they sniff out for their sales ability? Because I find that like sales has nothing to do with the service, it has everything to do with like the solution and how to get to the solution. And so what should the attorney be mindful of, even if they're not themselves a great salesperson? What should they be looking out for? What should they be interviewing for in terms of like the sales acumen to sniff out the right candidate?
Well, one thing about law is you just need to kind of show people that you're going to do what you say you're going to do, because most people have no idea what they're actually paying for. Like if someone hires for like a marriage green card, they might be able to look up the form online, and that's all they're going to know about it. Say, I see this form and my information goes there, and that's it. So pretty much, I mean, there's all this stuff about being like a great salesperson, but part of it's just proving that you can do what you say you're going to do. But for the most part, most people aren't calling law firms randomly. It's not like they're not fishing for, they might be looking for information, but someone has like a designated need for it is the thing. And you're also not cold calling other people either, because you can't do that as a lawyer. People have to designate that they need help. But overall, the thing is, as far as what to look for in the interview, a lot of what we look for is some common questions are, how do you stay organized? What are good ways to communicate? How do you handle rough situations? Or tell me about a time you deal with a rough, customer service solution or something. It doesn't always have to be at work. It can be a time you maybe had an argument with a family member or something, kind of that. Because you want to make sure that people can act well under stress. Because this is a stressful time for them, especially someone's immigrating, their dad's like getting deported, and they're like whatever else is going on. And then they're calling the law firm frantically wanting to do this. And then this person has tons of other calls coming in and they need to focus on that person. So that's that. But also that test I brought up earlier, that's a lot of what that's for too, is you can collect this information beforehand. You can say, hey, all right, part of it in there is write a sample email for the attorney that asks for documents, and they give them some documents. But then you can see, okay, like how does this person communicate in writing? Do they have a more softer styles, and more just like, hi Juan Carlos, please send these documents. The attorney needs them by the next date. And kind of see, and maybe that's what you want. Maybe you want someone that's just very kind of curt and frank with people. It's kind of that. But overall, that's kind of that. But like actually on the interview itself, I mean, one, you can't look for prior sales skills. We largely look for, can someone follow a process and directions? Because even if you're not very organized, the legal industry is very process driven. I mean, the government has a process, the court has a process, and all that. And your firm, if you're watching this, you probably want to have a sales process. So that's kind of the thing. It's can they follow the steps, which a lot of times is, we might need to gather something from the client to review to determine if they can do a consult. After the consult, the attorney will have to collect some additional information that the person might need to review to give to them. And then you'll need to check from there.
Do you find that the hires are more important than the process, or do you find that the process is more important?
No, not at all. Because the right process will attract the right person, not the other way around. Because there are plenty of really skilled people that'll just stop working somewhere if it's not very well built out. Because that's kind of the thing. There are a lot of people recruiting in Latin America, tons of call centers, all this. I mean, 5 years ago, I wasn't quite as working to do hey, I didn't think I'd ever see an ad for an American company here. And I never get to speak English when I'm at work now. This is a big opportunity. And not to say I don't get those people, but it's a big industry now, finding all the people abroad and then having them work.
Well, what's a recent case study that you can tell us about, without specifying names or firms, where you saw a real transformation, a real before and after let's call it 6 months to a year? I would love to hear about recent clients. Yeah,
absolutely. So firm in Chicago, doing a lot of deportation, asylum cases there, right up the street from the immigration court. A lot of people went into the office in person. They had consults scheduled out for a few months. And then, of course, the attorney is also an attorney. So he needs to go stand in front of the judge, review the legal work, sign things, manage the firm, run payroll, all those things, running a business. So what we did with them is, so they kind of just had this paper intake they were filling in, and they would he told me this in the sales call. It's I just set this piece of paper on my shelf and I look at it and nothing happens with it. It's no purpose. Wow. So what we actually did is we wanted to transition into a CRM, but that would have been too fast, because I know a lot of people watching this, you might not be very technologically innovative in your firm yet. So what we had them do is, instead of having that paper questionnaire, we made a form in their account. It was on Microsoft Forms, really easy tool, connected to an Excel sheet. And then essentially, whenever he did a consult, he would just fill out the form on a laptop, or he would talk to the people, real simple, just kind of a light thing. Then afterwards, what we did there is those were all the people that did consults. And then before that, they had all the inquiries on another sheet of the spreadsheet. And And then they had all the people that had received like quotes or offers from there. So that was kind of that quantity, quality, viability in one spreadsheet with kind of that whole process of this is all the leads. These are the ones that talk to the attorney. And these are the ones that received the quote that we want to work with. And after that, so pretty much after we got that set up, we had people start calling the leads beforehand and then screening them because they had a few months of consults. So tell them, hey, attorney's excited to meet with you. These are potentially the elements of your case. It's like, all right, sounds good. They would ask you questions, run it past the attorney, call them back, like, all right, well, listen, you can come in. Your case is going to potentially cost X amount. Is that a cost you're okay with? You come in, they need to verify first. So that way, they weeded out a lot of the people. And that way, most of these people were going to court too. Is they had court dates. They need to plan this accordingly. So that was kind of that. But that built out that side of the process. And then afterwards, we put it into their case management system. DocuWise had them start using a CRM, had that same questionnaire style, which is copy and paste into there. Then now when they had their cases, they would just do the consult. They got a new client. They pressed a button. They would just convert to matter, convert to client, whatever the button says in there. It was that. So they went from having this paper intake process where they would just kind of pray that people would come back to having this process over the course of 6 months where someone would come in, do a pre-screening, they know the price come in, and then people were coming in for consults with the money, to pay. And then pretty much from there, it was all in the system. So all the attorney notes and everything, the paralegal could just start the case right away, knowing that, okay, this is when the person entered, this is their home country, that they're not a dual citizen or whatever the information happens to be. So over that 6 months, they were able to add on a lot of revenue to the firm. But it was really simple. All they implemented was a pre-call. The attorney started filling out a form on his computer, on a laptop, instead of filling out a paper form that would then have to be scanned or re-uploaded somewhere else. And then essentially after that, once we moved them to using DocuWise, they could just press a button with the clients, and then within a minute, they had all the information there. And a lot of times they were doing it while the person was at the firm, so they could start actually doing the onboarding there, so the cases got processed a bit more quickly, which is the thing. When you have a really smooth sales process, the whole client management process is a lot better because you're setting that expectation that they need to get back to you quickly, they need to follow directions, they need to do this, which when you're asking for documents or you have something you need from them, it becomes a lot more clear. But that was a really good process for them. It worked out really well. The firm's thriving. It grew a lot even while we were working there. But that was a way to clear out this 3-4 month backlog of potential clients down to people that would pay more quickly. And also, it was a lot of stress too, because everything was logged. They could go and see, okay, we did 36 consults this week, 24 qualified based on what was in the form, instead of kind of sifting through these pieces of paper. Yeah. Just kind of sit, and it's a lot because it's paper everywhere. So that's
remarkable.
For sure.
So
it was good.
Would you? What percentage of the clients that you work with, rather the time that you allocate towards clients, is it? What's the percentage breakdown on process versus recruiting?
So it varies by firm. I mean, not every firm really needs to recruit people because a lot of the times a lot of times firms are just they're a little behind because they're inefficient, or they have people that you might have 2 paralegals. One answers the phone and fills the forms, and the other one answers the phone and fills the forms. But you start talking to them, and they only half of their job, which is the other. Yeah. So, and that's kind of the thing, because as the firm grows, it's important to have that role division. But overall, it's kind of the process comes first, and then a lot of times we do staff and hire a lot. But most of the firms that come to us, they want the process and everything, because that's kind of what's important. You want to implement it, then you can hire people to plug into there. But I mean, the analogy I really like is imagine there's 2 people that get a gym membership. One of them, maybe they do online course at home, they stretch at home, they run, they bike, whatever. They're disciplined anyways. They just don't go to the gym. They take care of themselves. And the other one's a couch potato. They don't really do anything in that. It's which one do you think is going to be better off going to the gym? They can both succeed. It's not to say they can't. They both have an equal chance. But the underlying systems and habits is what predisposes, you or that person for success. But that's a lot of what our approach is. It's okay. Even if we hire remote staff, we want this to be a very turnkey, easy model for them to work with. But then also when we do that, it's very clear what work is being subtracted somewhere else. So that way someone doesn't have the anxiety of now that I'm not onboarding clients, are they going to get documents correctly? Or they're not going to bill the clients correctly when we get started? Or are they going to, whatever else?
That's fantastic. So, I'm hearing, even with the process though, even with the tech supporting the firm, it's fundamentally a human capital business. Even now, right? It's no matter what, it's so.
Oh yeah.
And so I'm curious if you've explored or if you found any potential AI breakthroughs in these processes that could supplement or even potentially even replace human capital. So have you found anything that's getting a lot of attention with your clients or even yourself?
Oh yeah, absolutely. We use AI quite a bit. I mean, one thing though is you can use AI to automate a lot of the mundane parts of the job. I mean, even a receptionist on the phone, someone can call in and ask a somewhat advanced legal question, and not that they need to know the answer to that, but they can at least plug it into ChatGPT and tell them, hey, what's the topic of this question? Because especially in immigration, people will call up and say, oh yeah, my whatever form just became current on the visa bulletin and we're waiting to file for the green card. Like, when are we able to do that? And you might have someone that's there on their third day, like, I have no idea what this person's asking me right now. So that obviously makes it easy. But one of the things you can really use AI for is there's a lot of AI voice tools out there. A number of them charge like per call. So if you want to have someone call in and they can talk any language you want, so you can do a screening. I just met with a client this morning. We were talking about using an AI just to call and just get people on the phone and then transfer it to their salespeople. And this firm gets, they'll get a few thousand inquiries a week sometimes because they have a large social media following. But that's the thing, is how do you actually process all them? So there's probably only like 400 in there that are somewhat viable. So
what service is that? Would you mind sharing what the name of the service is that does this?
Yeah, there's a lot of them out there. I mean, Gabby's one phone system. I mean, we have one actually that we have in a CRM that we use. A lot of the big phones, VoIP phone providers have it. Dialpad has it. RingCentral has an AI component. And it might not do every single thing you're thinking, but then I mean, you could have it. Some of these phone systems have it now, where instead of the call going to voicemail, it goes to an AI agent, which can then answer the phone and at least screen the person and get their information. So there are quite a few of those now. So that's kind of the thing. But also you can use AI for really basic things that just take up a lot of time. Like, for example, if someone needs to write an email about a topic they're not as familiar with, or a lot of these people you're hiring, if they're writing in a second language, just make sure that their grammar and everything's correct. That's something else. But also a lot of these training manuals, AI will make it for you. I mean, we put all this stuff together manually in the last 4 years, but AI will make a lot of this stuff for you if you prompt it correctly.
That's great, Ian. I mean, we could talk about this for 5 hours, but we can't. But, I think we would like to talk to you again for another future conversation. But for those exploring, at least immigration attorneys watching right now, exploring your services, your consulting and process building, hiring non-attorney sales staff, et cetera, where should they go?
Well, you can check us out online, immigrationfinder.com. If you want to email me, ian@immigrationfinder.com. That's a good way to do it. I'll also give out we have an online course for training intake agents. So I have videos on how to self-paid consults for immigration law, all the sort of different types of visa types. And so you can have the course for free. We usually give it to paid clients. So you can have that right there for training the agents. So that'd be a good way to do it. And then also if you're at the AVA conferences, feel free to swing by. You can't do that. But, check out our website. Come schedule a call with me or with my team, whoever's on the calls that day. We'll be able to go from there.
Awesome, Ian. Thank you so much for hopping on. And to everyone watching, thank you for joining. Please share with any other attorneys who may find this relevant to them right now. And to our team, production team, thank you for putting this together. That's JC, Allie, Dave, everyone else, the team. Thank you so much. And everyone else, have a great day.
Thank you, everyone.